Hello and welcome back to the next module. In this module, what we will be looking at is a file to IDoc scenario. And what do we mean by a file to IDoc scenario is where an input XML file is going to be picked up by PI, and now we are going to integrate it with an SAP ECC environment where this is then going to be translated into an IDoc, and the IDoc is posted into SAP. The business scenario that we are looking at is a sales order being created in SAP. So a sales order input file is going to come in. That input file is going to have this particular format in the XML. It's going to have a header, and within the header you will have a couple of fields: the order type, what is the sales organization, what is the distribution channel, what is the division, what is the input PO number, who's the customer information, what's the sold to party and the ship to party. And then you will have multiple line items. Any sales order or any purchase order can have multiple line items. So you'll have each item information with what is the item number, what is the quantity, and what is the corresponding SAP material number. So PI is going to look for a file like this. PI is going to pick up this file, and once PI picks up this file, PI is now going to map it to a standard SAP IDoc. So there's going to be an extensive mapping that we are going to be doing, and then we are going to use the IDoc adapter of PI and push the IDoc to your ECC environment. Okay, so before we look at the IDoc adapter configuration, what are the certain mapping rules? These are the mapping rules that we are going to be following, because these are the mandatory or the bare minimum fields that need to be filled in for a sales order to be created in SAP. The IDoc type that we are going to use is a standard SAP IDoc, orders.orders05. We will see how do we import an IDoc from SAP into PI and so on, nothing to worry. But for now, just remember the fact that the IDoc that we're going to be importing is an orders.orders05 IDoc. And there are certain mapping rules that we have defined. The way to read these mapping rules is this is the field of the IDoc under even EDK01 Bellner. We are going to take the PO number from the input file. Even EDK14 is the next segment. The qualifier will have a constant value 008, and the org ID is going to be taken from the input file with the distribution channel, right? So when we are building this mapping, we will use this as a reference and map, or as per this particular mapping rules, we will be building our mapping. Okay, so we will be doing a back and forth, nothing to worry about that, but we will be doing a back and forth. When we are building the mapping, we will look at each of these fields, each of these line item, and perform our mapping rules. What are the typical steps that we will be doing? The first step we will be doing is importing the IDoc from ECC. So in the enterprise service repository, if you're from an SAP background, you would understand that SAP provides multiple IDocs. IDoc is nothing but an intermediate document that SAP provides. So SAP provides hundreds and thousands of standard IDocs in each SAP system. So instead of you manually creating a data type for that, SAP provides a schema for that, and we will be just connecting to the SAP system and importing that IDoc schema. Okay, so in the enterprise service repository, you will import the IDoc. For the file system, we will be creating a data type, a message type, and a service interface. What is the service interface going to be? It's going to be an outbound asynchronous service interface. And what is the data type going to look like? It's going to look like something like this. Okay, so we will be building a data type, we'll be building a message type, and an outbound asynchronous service interface. We will be looking at how do we build this message mapping and operation mapping by using the IDoc itself. If you remember our file to file scenario, what we did was we defined one data type, one message type, and one service interface for the source structure, and then for the target structure we define one data type, one message type, and one service interface. Whereas in the case of a file to IDoc scenario, you only need to define the data type, message type, and the service interface for the source structure. For the target structure, the IDoc that you import will act as both the message type and a service interface. So basically we will look at how do we use an IDoc as a message type in a message mapping, and the IDoc as a service interface in an operation mapping. Again, this is just a theoretical overview. As we start building these objects, things will start falling in place. So once we are done with defining the message mapping and the operation mapping, our enterprise service repository work would be done. Within the integration directory, what we will be doing is we will be using the business system. Remember, ECC is a web-based ABAP. If we remember the SLD overview that we did, there are multiple different types of technical systems. You have a web-based ABAP technical system, you have a web-based Java technical system, and we have a third-party technical system. A web-based ABAP technical system corresponds to an SAP system that has an ABAP runtime or an ABAP engine. So because ECC has an ABAP system, you will be using a business system that is of type web-based ABAP. So we will look at the SLD, we will look at ECC, what is our ECC system, what is the technical system that we have defined for this, and what is the corresponding business system. Okay, for the file system, we will use the existing third-party business system that we define in our file-to-file scenario, and then we will configure our interface. We will create a sender communication channel, we will create a receiver IDoc adapter, then we will create our sender agreement, receiver determination, interface determination, and receiver agreement option. Before that, what we would also be doing is for PI to connect to SAP, we will be defining an RFC destination in SM59, and we will be defining a port in IDX2. So we will be using these slides as a reference point, and then we will be building upon each of these objects as we are talking about them. Okay, so I've already launched my ESR and my integration directory. So with no further ado, let's go ahead. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to be doing, I'll close my previous scenarios. The first thing we will be doing is defining a namespace. How do we define a namespace? You right click and you say new. Okay, make sure the namespace is selected, and now let's go ahead and type our namespace. It's going to be training.com/file2idoc_00, because the source is a file and the target is IDoc, and we use a suffix 00 to indicate our objects, right? So I've defined a namespace. I'm giving a description, namespace for file2idoc scenario. I've given a description, and I'm now saving my namespace. Okay, my namespace definition is done, and I've imported my namespace. Now I need to import my IDoc, right? So let's look at the first step. I'll come out of the PowerPoint slide. Sorry. The first step is import the IDoc from ECC, right? So let's first grab the so what you need to do is, first of all, you need to tell our PI ESR which ECC system you need to connect to. So double click on your software component. So what I'm doing is, if you look at it, my cursor is on Z training SWCV 001 of training.com. I'm double clicking on my software component, and out here, if you see, there's this section called interface import, and here it has connection data for import from SAP system. So go into edit mode of your software component, make sure you're in the edit mode, and provide the system details of your SAP system. Okay, so what is the system that we are going to connect to? I'm going to launch my ESR, my ECC system. So right click, properties, this is my IP address, my instance number is 28. Okay, sorry, okay, my system message server is this is ECC, and my client, let's see what my client is. Instance number is 28. Okay, and my client is 800. Yes, my client is 800. Okay, client is 800. Okay, so I've given my system details, system number, client, message server is the application server or the IP address, and I'm going to save. Okay, now that I've saved this data, I'm closing it. Okay, now you see there's a section within your software component called imported objects, right? So I'm now going to go ahead and right click and say import of SAP objects. Perfect. So it's telling, sorry, let me repeat that. Go to the section called imported objects, right click and say import of SAP objects. Okay, imported objects, import of SAP object, right click and say import of SAP object. It's going to ask you for your application server. Give the application server and give the system details. System number is 28, and this is my IP address. It's asking me for my username, which is user PI 15, and my password Okay, so I given my username and password to connect to my ECC environment, and I say continue. Give your IP address of your ECC system. So here you go. What does it say? Different systems. What does it mean? System EH5 is running on the specified application server. How a source system ECC is defined? Do you want to disconnect or continue? So I'm going to say separate. I'm going to close this. So there's a problem. The problem is my SAP system SID is called EH5. So if you look at it here, sorry, okay, I'm going to cancel. If I go back to my SAP logon pad, this system is called EH5, but then when I was defining in my software component, I had called it ECC. So this was a wanted done error wanted done that I did wantedly. So now I'm going back into my software component. How do I do that? Double click, and then instead of ECC, I'm going to call it my SAP SID. So my ECC environment is called EH5, so I've called it EH5. I'm closing it. Now I'm going to imported objects, right click, import of SAP object, provide my IP address, provide my system number as 28, give my password, and I say continue. Now that warning should not come, perfect. And here if you see, I can see all the IDocs that are there in the SAP system. So when you're expanding on this IDoc, depending on your network speed, this step will take some time. You'll have to be extremely patient, because what PI does is it connects to the backend SAP system with the username password that you had provided, and brings out the list of all the IDocs that are defined in that SAP system. So you will have to be extremely patient here. At times this can even take 5 to 10 minutes depending on the network speed that you're in. So we'll just wait for the system to load, and once it is loaded, we will be back. So till then, just give me a second and I shall be back. Excellent. So all the IDocs. So if you see, this is the dialog box, and if you see here, there are multiple IDocs in my ECC environment, and all those IDocs will be visible here, right? So now, if you remember, if I go back to my slide, what is the IDoc type that I'm going to be using? It's orders.order05. In any project, this data would be given by a functional consultant as to what is the IDoc type, what is the message type, and so on. So in this case, I'm just going to go hit orders.order05 and ask PI to search for it. And immediately I get the orders.order05. I select this IDoc and I say continue. Select your IDoc and say continue. It will say, hey, do I go ahead and import? Say yes and say import by clicking finish. You will get a message that says import started, and once the import is completed, you will get a message that says import is completed. We'll wait for that. Again, depending upon the size of your IDoc and the network speed, this can take some time, so you will have to show some patience. Let's wait for the IDoc to be imported. My typical recommendation when you're importing IDocs is do not do a lot of alt tab, because if you do an alt tab and come back, you will get a message that says the screen is not responding and so on. Do not worry. Do not try to exit using Task Manager exit. In fact, because of the amount of data that is being loaded, your PI ESR will show not responding, but in fact it is doing its job. So I typically do not do a lot of alt tab. I just say, hey, select import, and I just wait for PI to do its work. The moment you do alt tab, you might end up with a not responding screen and so on. So just the recommendation, especially in your initial days, is select your object and wait for PI to respond back. Okay, don't try to do multitasking while the import is happening. Okay, so here you got the message, the import is successful. I'll close this dialog box. And once I close it, now if you see under imported objects, I have a new tree, and that says orders.order05. Okay, let's go to our change list and activate our change list. Okay, I had defined a namespace, I have imported an IDoc, and both of those are displayed in my change list. Now I'm going ahead and activating my change list. How do I activate? Right click on your change list and say activate. My change list has activated. Perfect. And now my IDoc is available to be used. Okay, so what was the next step that we had to do? The next step was going to be defining a data type, a message type, and service interface. The data type has these fields: an order type, a sales org, and a distribution channel, right? So we'll go here, right click on your namespace. My namespace is file to IDoc, say new, create a data type. Go to interface objects, data type. Make sure you're in interface objects data type. Data type is visible here. Say dt file to IDoc underscore source underscore 00. Okay, and I say create. Right now, if I look at my PPT, sorry, I'm having this trouble, but if I look at my PPT, I have record set, and within the record set I have a header and I have high items, right? So let's go ahead and define within the record set. Let's go ahead and define the header and the line item. Okay, so let's go ahead and now add the data type structure. So first field that we have to define is a record set. So say insert sub element record set. Oops, there's a typing mistake. Record set. For now, we will just have one. We'll go ahead with just the record set occurrences was 1:1, and then within the record set we are going to have a header field. So I'll say header, and again the header is going to occur 1:1, and within this I'm going to insert an sub element that's going to be called order type, right? So order type as XSD string. Let's make the occurrence as mandatory. All right, so now my cursor is on order type, which means I'll say insert element, right? Order type sales org distribution channel. So let's go ahead, type that sales org. I prefer doing all of this in one shot, so that way it's a little faster. Distribution channel, division, PO number, sold to party, and ship to party. So insert element, division, PO number, sold to party, and ship to party. All right, so we have all of this covered, and I'm just going to copy the XSD string here and just put all of that here. Awesome, excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to click here on the header level, because now I have to insert an item at the header level. I'm going to say insert element, and I'm going to call that item. Each purchase order can have multiple items, so this is going to occur 1 to unbounded. Each PO needs to have at least one line item. So that's it. My item is imported. I have to give item number, quantity, and material. So I'm going to say insert element, sub element. Okay, and here I'm going to say insert element. So I'm going to say item number, quantity, and material number. Okay, I'm going to make it all a string again. I'm just doing a copy paste, and with that my data type is defined. Make a save, and you should be able to see data type which contains one record set, which contains one header and multiple line item, and all these fields under the header and line item. Okay, next we need to define a message type. So I'm going to right click, say new. Let's just copy the name of the data type so we can reuse that. New, I select message type, I say empty, I copy the name, I change the DT as empty. So empty, create, make sure you're under interface object, message type. You see message type here, and give the name empty file to IDoc source 00. So now I've created the message type. Now I'm going to use the selection help, drag it. Make sure, again, we did that previously as well, drag it to the hand symbol, make sure that the black box comes over, and once it comes over, leave it up. And now your message type has been created. Save your message type. Perfect. What's the next object? You created a data type, you created a message type, and now you need to create a service interface, right? So right click on your namespace, go to interface objects, select service interface. Make sure you're in interface objects, service interface, give the name. Okay, I'm just going to copy the name here, SIOA file to IDoc source 00. Okay, say create. So the attributes, the category is outbound, the mode is asynchronous, perfect, and then I drag the message type and I put it here. Make sure the entire black box is visible. Drag your message type here and drop it here and save. Do a Ctrl+S, or you can use the save button here. Okay, and my service interface is done. So we are done with creating a data type. We are done with importing the IDoc. We imported the IDoc. You can see the IDoc here. And then we've created the data type. We've seen the data type, message type, and the service interface created here. So let's go ahead and activate our change list. Perfect. My change list is activated. I'm going to close all my objects. Let's go ahead and define the message mapping now. I'll open the mapping rules that we had defined. Okay, so I'm going to go here, right click, new, mapping objects. Make sure you're in mapping object, make sure you selected message mapping, and then let's provide the name of our message mapping, mm_file to IDoc _00. Okay, now in the source message we are going to drag our source message type. So select your source message type that we had defined previously, drag it into the source message. Make sure this is in black, and that's our source message type. In the target message type, previously, if you remember, we would, in the file to file scenario, we had defined a target message type. In the case of IDocs, you need not define a target message type. The imported object, the IDoc that you imported from SAP, will act as the target message type itself. So the IDoc is both a message type and a service interface. So all you'll have to do is go to your imported objects, IDocs, select your corresponding IDoc, orders.order05 in this case, drag it and put it into the target message, and again if you see, it becomes a black box, which means it is really going to let you do that, and voila, you're done. Okay, and now let's go ahead and define the mapping. The first thing, what you'll start noticing is there are fields in segments in red. It means that because if you see, the occurrence is 1:1, or these are mandatory. Okay, so let's start with the first red field, begin. The IDoc has multiple attributes, and all of these attributes need to have a constant that with a value 1 defined. So let's do the mapping for the begin. For the begin node, take a constant and define the value of the constant as 1. So if you see here, I've defined a constant and I'm setting the value of the constant to be 1. Okay, now this EDI DC40 is what we call as a control record of an IDoc. In this scenario that we are doing, what we're going to do is the control record is going to be auto populated by PI. You need not manually populate this control record, and hence you can always disable this control record. So what you need to do is go to EDI DC40, right click and say disable field. I repeat, go to EDI_DC40, right click and disable field, because the control record in this case is going to be auto populated by PI. Okay, you need not manually populate it. Now let's go to E1EDK01, the segment E1EDK01. Let's look at the mapping. For E1EDK01, we need to define the Bellner. But before that, for the segment, it's a mandatory field. So wherever, just let's go ahead and define it with a constant and provide a value that is 1. So I'm mapping it to a constant with a value 1. And then the Bellner field, if you look at the mapping rules, E1EDK01 Bellner should be the PO number field. So I'm double clicking the Bellner field and I'm taking the PO number here. Oops, sorry. I'm taking the PO number, drag the PO number to the Bellner field, delete, and you're done. Now you see the E1EDK01 has turned from red to green because the mandatory fields have been mapped. Okay, let's look at the next field. It's E1EDK14, and now if you see, there are 4 occurrences of E1EDK14 for different qualifiers, 8, 7, 6, and 12, right? So what you'll have to do is you'll have to go to E1EDK14 and right click and say duplicate subtree so that it occurs 4 times. once, right click, duplicate subtree, right click, duplicate subtree. All right, now let's go ahead and map the first even EDK14. Okay, so I'm double clicking the even EDK14. I'm mapping it to a constant. Okay, map the even EDK14 to a constant value, and then you'll have a segment. The segment is always going to be the constant with value 1. Throughout any IDoc in your SAP career, whenever you're in your PI career, whenever you're mapping a segment attribute, it always has to have a value 1. That is a rule. Okay, first qualifier should have a value 008. So let's drag the constant and map it to a value 008. Next, the org ID is mapped to the distribution channel. So double click. Where's my distribution channel? My distribution channel is here. Sorry, there's some issue. Oops. So I'm just going to double click it so I get the right one, because when I'm dragging and dropping there seems to be an issue. The double click distribution channel is mapped here. Now let's go to the next even EDK14, right? So double click the next even EDK14, map it to a constant. You can empty the value of the constant, make it a blank constant, and once I mapped it, the value of segment is going to be, you guessed it right, constant value 1. Okay, constant with value 1. Now the qualifier has to be 007. So I'm going to here (007), and the org ID is going to be your sales organization. So, and where's my sales org? Here is my sales org. Drag it and drop it. Okay, the next even EDK14, again, let's do this. Delete the constant. Segment will have the value 1. Qualifier will have the value 006. Now that I mapped qualifier, the 006 has to be mapped to, org ID has to be mapped to division. So double click the division, drag it to the org ID, and you're done. Okay, this is the last even EDK14 that we have to map. This is the fourth even EDK14 that we are mapping. So I'm doing the mapping here. Segment will have the value 1. Sorry. Segment has the value 1. Qualifier will have the value 012. Again, all these mapping rules are typically provided by a functional consultant, so nothing to worry. These are just rules that have been defined. And then org ID is to be the order type, right? So org ID, and then where's my order type here? Order type. Okay, awesome, excellent. So we are done with all the even EDK14. Now we need to go in and define even EDKA1. Now if you see, the even EDKA1 has two values. One is par VWAG, and so there are two occurrences required. So let's minimize this and let's go to even EDK1, but this is available on, it occurs 0 to 99, but in the target it's only once, right? So right click the same way that we did for even EDK14, right click on even EDKA1 and say duplicate subtree. Okay, and now again for even EDKA1, provide a constant. The segment will have the value 1. Par VW will have the value AG. And PARTN will have the value of sold to party. So you will map sold to party here. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Next even EDK1, map it to a constant. go to segment, map it to a constant 1. Par VW is going to be ship to party, which is WE, constant, map it to the constant WE, and then PARTN is going to be your ship to party. Oops. So I'm double clicking on ship to party, dragging it here, and I'm deleting all the floating objects and laying out the mapping. Perfect. So even EDK1 is done. Excuse me. Now we'll look at even EDK02. So even EDK02 is out here. Perfect. So even EDK02 qualifier should be 001 and Bellner should be 1. So let's map even EDK02 to a constant. Segment will be a value 1. The attribute segment will have the value 1. And the qualifier is going to have the value 001. And Bellner is going to have the value of the PO number. So if I take the PO number here, let's double click the Bellner, and I'm now going to drag the double click the PO number, and here we go. I'm just going to quickly save it. I don't want to lose my changes in case my network fails or something happens. So I've saved it. Cool, awesome. And now that's the last one. The even EDP01 is mapped to the item. So each item should create an even EDP01 segment. So I'm double clicking on even EDP01. I'm double clicking the item and I'm dragging the even. So each line item is now going to create the even EDP01. Now it's asking me for the value of segment. So I'm going to give the value of segment. Yes, the value of segment will be 1. Now that we know segment mapping is done, POSX is going to be item number. So let's go to POSX. We have to map it to item number. Double click, drag, drop, align. Perfect. Action is going to be a constant 001. Mengi is going to be quantity. So this is my Mengi. So this is going to get dragged to quantity. You can also look at the description here. A lot of it comes from the standard SAP description. Okay, quantity is done. Next you go to even EDP 19. So within even EDP 01 you'll have even EDP 19. Here is even EDP 19. Map it to a constant. This will contain the final material number. Okay, so within even EDP 01 you have even EDP 19, right? And within that you have qualifier. First let's do the segment mapping. Qualifier 003, not 001. I made a mistake. Delete floating object. Oops, sorry, the segment, right? Segment has to be 1. It is qualifier that should be 003. My mistake. 003. And IDTNR is the material number. Right, so I drag the material number here. Perfect. With this, align object, save your mapping, and all the fields in the source are mapped. You see everything's turned green, and all the corresponding fields as per our mapping logic have been mapped. Okay, now that our message mapping is defined, the next step is to define an operation mapping. So right click, new, under mapping object, select operation mapping and give the name of your operation mapping OM file to IDoc 00. Okay, now your service source interface is going to be the service interface, your outbound asynchronous. So I'm going to drag the service interface here. Your operation mapping will always use service interfaces. Now in the target operation mapping, in the target interface, we did not define the service interface, and just as we did for the message mapping, even for the interface operation mapping, you just need to use the IDoc, IDoc that is under the imported objects IDoc. Just drag the same, put it into the target interface, and you're done. Click on read operations. The read operations is done, and use the selection help for the message mapping. The mapping that you just developed should be visible. Select the message mapping, and you're done. Okay, and save your operation mapping. With this, everything in the ESR is done. Let's go ahead and activate the change list. Activate and activate. Okay. Now, before we move on to the integration directory, let's log on to the SAP system. What is the SID of the SAP system? The SID of the SAP system is EH5, right? Now I'm going to my PI homepage and I'm going to this SLD and seeing if this system is registered on my SLD. So I'm logging on to my PI server. Okay, I'll just save my password. I'll go to technical system. What is the SID? It is EH5. Okay, so I'm going to go here. I'm searching. So I went to the SLD and I'm going into the technical system. I want to see if there's a technical system already defined for EH5. So I'm selecting technical system and entering EH5. Excellent. My EH5 technical system is there in my SLD. And now if I go to the business systems tab, I will see that, hey, there's a business system called EH5 Client 800. Let's click on that. Let's go to integration. Perfect. There's a logical system name ERP. It's assigned to Client 800. Okay. What that means is if I go here, for ECC, we will need to use a web ABAP business system. And what is the business system we will need to use? We will need to use the business system that is called EH5 Client 800. So I'm going to log on to my integration directory. Okay. And sorry, I'm going to the business systems. I'm going to look for EH5 CLNT 800. So let's keep going down. A, B, C, D, E. We don't see it here. Do we see it? No. The reason is we are in the folder view. So let's go ahead and change to the object view. Once you go to the object view, just click here, go to object view. Now go to communication channel component without party business system. And let's look for EH5 Client 800. Here we go, EH5 Client 800. Say right click, assign, or say move to folder. Right click, move to folder, and move it to your training folder. Okay, so I'm now moving to my training 00 folder and saying apply. So I moved the EH5 Client 800 to my training folder. Now I've selected the folder view again, and now I'm going to my training view. Okay, and my EH5 Client 800 is visible now. Okay, so now let's create a new folder called file to IDoc 00. Okay, awesome. So now let's go ahead and configure our interface. So what was the first thing you would need to do? You will need to define a sender communication channel, and the sender communication channel is going to be under BS file system underscore 00. Let's use the selection help. Make sure it is visible. Yes. And we'll be calling the sender channel as CC file to IDoc underscore file underscore sender underscore 00. Okay, because this is the sender is going to be a file adapter. All right, and we'll select the file type as file. Okay, file is selected. Okay, and let's get the directory. So I'm going to my PI system. Okay, so this is my directory. Let's copy it. I have it in my notepad actually, so let's just get it from my notepad. Okay, so this is my directory where the sender file adapter has to look for my file, and I'm going to call my input file as file2idoc.xml. okay, go into the processing mode, make sure it is delete because you don't want your PI to be looking for the file. Let's change the polling interval instead of 60 seconds to 30 seconds and then save the communication channel. So my sender system is still my BS file system 00 and my communication channel is this. Okay, now we are going to create a receiver communication channel. So let's go ahead and create a receiver communication channel. CC, but where would we create a receiver communication channel? Are we going to create it under BS file system 00? No, our receiver system is our ECC environment, and our ECC system is called EH5 client 800, right? So select EH5 client 800, say apply. Now give the name of the channel file to idoc underscore receiver underscore 00, because this is of type receiver file idoc, right? So let's select this. What's the type? It's going to be idoc. Do not use idoc AAE. If you see idoc AAE in your system, we will be using this in our subsequent exercises, but for now we are going to use the idoc adapter that runs on the ABAP stack, and that's why we are going to select the idoc adapter. Okay, is it a sender channel or a receiver channel? It's a receiver channel. To switch it to receiver, and now you just save the channel and look at this. What does it ask? There are three mandatory fields that it is asking. It's asking for a RFC destination, it is asking for a port, and it is asking for the SAP release, right? My system is a ECC 60 system. So if I go, my release is going to be, it's running on a 740 server. So I set the release. But what about the RFC destination and port? Okay, so which is what, if you look at the slides, we say define a RFC destination and define a port. So in SM59 we will be defining an RFC destination pointing to the ECC system. In a typical project landscape, this activity will be done by your basis team. Same way, even if I go to the transaction SM59, I repeat, the transaction to define an RFC destination is SM59. I go to SM59 and you need to make sure you define a ABAP connection of type 3. And if you see here, we already have an RFC destination defined for EH5 client 800. This RFC destination contains what is the target host we are connecting to, what is the instance number, what is the username, password, and so on. Okay, so this destination has already been created. So we are just going to go ahead, use this destination and put it out here. Okay, same way, what is the port? The port is created in transaction IDX2. I repeat, the port is created in transaction IDX2. So let's go to IDX2. Do you see something for EH6 client 800? We do. So if you see, I'm sorry, my mistake here, the port is created in transaction IDX1. My bad, you have to go to transaction IDX1. Now when you go to IDX1, let's see if there's a port that is defined for EH5 client 800. There is a port called EH5 client underscore 800, which in turn is using this destination. So let's copy the name of this port, okay, and put that here. If you want, you can also create a new port, but we will not. There's already an existing port. So again, /n IDX1. This is the name of my port, EH5 underscore 800, right? So I'm going to go here, EH5 underscore 800. That's it. My communication channel is also created. So I've created a sender file adapter and now I've created a receiver file adapter. What's the next step? You're going to create a sender agreement. So go create a sender agreement. Who's my sending system? It is my file system. So BS file system 00. And let's see for the service interface. And what is our service interface? An outbound service interface. It's our file to IDoc underscore source system. So select that and then say create. Okay, it's going to ask us for the sender communication channel. The integration directory steps are the same steps that we did for a file to file. And this is what, if you remember, I told you, you would keep doing these steps into each and every of your exercise. You will define a sender agreement where you define who's the sending system, who's the sender interface, and what is the namespace. And then you select the sender communication channel. Which is the communication channel? Is it a file to file channel? The answer is no. We are doing a file to IDoc scenario, so make sure you select your file to IDoc file sender channel that we just created. Save your sender agreement. And now that you've saved your sender agreement, we'll create our receiver determination. So right click, select receiver determination. Okay. Now that you've created receiver determination, the objects, it's a file to IDoc scenario. Yes, the object details are filled. So let's say create. Okay, who's the receiver of my interface? It is going to be the business system EH5 CLNT 800, because this is a web-based web app business system created in the SLD that we have assigned to our scenario. Okay, now how do you create an interface determination and a receiver agreement? You can go to configuration overview. You will see your receiver system. Make sure you've saved your receiver determination, and after you see your receiver determination, you see now the interface determination and the receiver agreement objects are requested. Right click on your interface determination, make sure you say new specific, and when you say new specific, your interface determination gets created. In the operation mapping field, select your operation mapping, and your operation mapping here is going to be your OM file to IDoc. Make sure it's your software component and your namespace. Excellent. Save your interface determination. Now go back and select your business scenario and refresh. Now that I've refreshed, my interface determination is displayed here. The only object pending to be created is my receiver agreement. So I'm selecting, right click and say new specific. Okay, my receiver agreement is created. It's asking me for a receiver communication channel. And now let's look over for a file to IDoc scenario. And if you see, here we go, CC file to IDoc underscore receiver underscore 00. This was the object that we created. Select it. This was the communication channel we created. Select it. Save, activate. Awesome. So all the objects in the integration directory are created. So let's go ahead to our change list and see what all do we have. We created a folder. We assigned the business system to our folder. We created two communication channels, one sender file adapter, one receiver IDoc adapter. We created a sender agreement. We created a receiver agreement. We created a receiver determination and an interface determination. Right click, activate your change list. Now that my changes are activated, let's go ahead and generate our XML file. So I'm going into my message mapping. In the ESR, I'm going to the test tab and I'm going to add my information. So we've got to enter the data. So I've already filled in the data for the order type, sales org, distribution channel, division, and so on. You can enter any value that you want because we're not really making sure that the data is perfect. I'll say item number 1, quantity number 20, and I want the material number is also 1. The item number I'll say 2, quantity as 10, and I will say the material number as say 123, something like that, right? And let's just execute the mapping here once. The mapping was executed. We just want to make sure everything's populating the way we want. The PO number is here, the distribution channel, sales org, PO number, the sold to party, the ship to party, the PO number, and the 2 line items with the material numbers. Excellent. Okay, yeah. So let's copy this data. We are going to use this data as our input file. I'll save this as file to idoc.xml. Yes, I'm going to replace it. It already exists. Okay, now I'm going to go in and upload this file through CG3Z. Okay, but I will have to do that via my ECC server. So I'm going to say login CG3Z. Let's open my notes. So this is my input file. File to IDoc.xml. Let's just make sure my name is correct. Yeah, that's correct. And then out here, same way, I'll say file to IDoc.xml and I'll execute it. And the file has been written. So now I go into AL11 here and make sure the file is there, or is the file been picked up. Let's check. So the file is here. Let's wait for 30 seconds and the file should get processed in 30 seconds. Meantime, let's just make sure that the file name is correct. So I open my sender channel. I want to remember that the file name check is a case sensitive. Okay, I is capital, D is capital, I is capital, D is capital. Perfect. One file has disappeared, the file is gone. Right? So how do we monitor the status of the message? We go to sxmb_moni. There will be an error. Do not panic. Do not worry. We are expecting an error and we'll also fix the error. So I went to sxmb_moni, monitor for processed XML messages, and here we go. As expected, as I was mentioning, we are expecting an error, and the error it says is error in IDoc processing, right? So let's double click, and what is the error that we get? Unable to convert sender service to an ALE logical system, and it is complaining about my sender business system. So what happens is when you're using an IDoc based scenario, your sender business system should have a logical system name assigned to it. Okay, so I'm going to my communication channel component. I'm opening my business system, double click the business system, go to communication channel component, adapter specific identifiers. Logical system name is blank. Let's look at it for the EH5 client 800. I'm double clicking EH5 client 800, going to communication channel component, adapter specific identifiers, and here I see that it has a logical system name. But for my file system, BS file system, I do not have a logical system name assigned to it. Go to adapter specific identifiers and the logical system name is not assigned to it. Okay, so how do I get it assigned? We will have to do that in the SLD. So let's go back to the SLD. Let's give the name of our business system. Okay, I'm going back to my SLD. I'm going to home, going to business systems, search for your business system, BS file system 00, say go. This is my business system. Okay, and here I do see a name that says filesys00. So out here I see it, but here I do not. Alright, so let's do one thing. Let's save this. Okay, BS file system 00 has a logical system that says filesys00, right? BS file system 00. Now I'm going to go into edit mode. Make sure you're in the edit mode. And before you do that, let's go into environment and clear the SLD data cache. Go to environment, clear your SLD data cache. This will make sure that the business system will get refreshed from the SLD. Now go into edit mode of your business system. Go to adapter specific identifiers. Go to adapter specific identifiers and you see this button here. Let's look at what it says. Compare with SL system landscape directory. So let's try that. Voila. Now you see whatever is there in the business system in the SLD is now available here. So I did that and I say apply. I say save. Okay. To repeat what we did, we went to the SLD. We made sure that the logical system name is assigned to the SLD. Then we went to the business system here. We went to environment. We did a clear SLD data cache. After we did that, you go into the edit mode of your. If you're not in the edit mode and you go to communication component adapter specific identifiers, this button is going to be disabled, right? So you need to go into the edit mode, and then you go to communication adapter specific identifiers, and now you see this button, compare with system landscape directory or compare with the SLD. Select this, say apply, save. Okay, now that we've done that, let's go ahead, activate our change list. And once we've activated our change list, do you think we need to reload the file? Is there a way I can resend this message? You absolutely can. Just select the message and click on this restart button out here. Okay, select the message, click on restart. It has told restarted. Refresh. Okay, so there are times when a restart might not work. This is one such case because the step has already been executed. So now let's go resend the file through CG3Z. So I'm resending the file. Okay, now that I've resent the file, let's see if the file goes away from AL11. We have set the processing as 30 seconds. So we'll have to wait for 30 seconds. Meantime, let's just check AL11. Okay, the file is gone. So which means if I refresh here, it has failed again. Let's see what the error is. Excellent. The error now is saying transaction IDX1, the RFC destination is containing some errors, right? So let's look at what this RFC destination error is, right? So I'm going to IDX1. Okay, and now this is the RFC destination and this is the RFC destination. Okay, let's do a utilities test connection test. This is right. Utilities test authorization test, and this is also right. So what does this error IDX1 port EH5 client 800 means? Let's go to IDX1 and let's see if the port is correct, right? So I'm going back to my port /n IDX1, and out here I double click. What we had done was we had called the port as EH5_800. That is in fact wrong. This is the name of your port. So instead of EH5 800_800, we need to call it EH5. So I've already gone that. I've done that. I've changed the name of the port from it was EH5_800. I've now changed it to EH5. I'm going to go ahead, activate my changes, and once I activate the changes, the scenario should work. Okay, so my changes are done. I go to my cache. Everything should be perfect in green. Yes, my cache is in green. And now I'm going to go into my error message. Oops. Okay, I have the same screen open but two locations. /n SXMB Moni. Monitor for processed XML messages. Execute. Now let's see. If you see this, you had the same error. So I'm now going to select this, say restart. You can either restart it from here or you can restart it from back. So let's go ahead, restart, select, restart, retain, refresh. Excellent. Now the IDoc has also been sent to SAP. Is there a way where I can monitor what the IDoc number in SAP is? You in fact can. So you scroll all the way to the right. In the outbound, you will see IDoc, a hyperlink. Click on that IDoc hyperlink, and now you see and click on this button out here, extended functionality. Click on that extended functionality and click on the button tracking. And when I say tracking, what's going to happen is PI is now going to go in and get the number of the IDoc from SAP. So this is the IDoc in SAP, and this is the status in SAP. And if I want to even check the IDoc, I can click on monitor. PI is going to remotely log on to ECC now. If you see, there's a remote login that has happened, and my IDoc from PI has come into SAP. If I go back to PI. Okay, excellent. Let's run this scenario one more time. I'm going to go ahead, upload my file. My file is uploaded. I'm going to go to AL11. My file is here. Let's refresh. It's going to take about 30 seconds at the maximum. The file has been picked up. Now I go back to my SXMB Money transaction, I refresh, and this is the latest message. How do I do IDoc tracking? This is what would be a typical view. Scroll down to the right. You will see the IDoc here. Click on IDoc. You will be able to see the PI IDoc number. Now expand this extended functionality. You don't see anything filled in here, right? Click on tracking and you get the SAP IDoc number here. Click on monitor and you will now be able to monitor, go to ECC and monitor your IDoc. Okay, with that, we've come to the end of our file to IDoc scenario. To summarize, what did we do in our file to IDoc scenario? We imported the IDoc from ECC, and to import the IDoc from ECC, what you had to do, you had to go into your software component, double click your software component and provide your system details here. You provide your application system ID, you provide your client, and you provide the message server, and then you import the IDoc by right clicking importing the IDoc. Okay, I imported the IDoc from SAP ECC. You defined a data type and a message type and a service interface for your source structure. You define a message mapping and an operation mapping. Very important thing to note here, the message mapping and an operation mapping will use the IDoc itself as its target message interface. Okay, once that was done, what did we do? For ECC system, we went ahead and checked if the web-based ABAP business system was existing in the SLD. It was. We assigned that EH5 client 800 to our configuration scenario, and once we did that, we went ahead, created a sender file adapter, a receiver file adapter, our sender agreement, receiver determination, interface determination, and receiver agreement. And then we tested our scenario, and we tested the scenario. We found two issues. Issue number one, no logical system name was assigned to my business system. So I go to communication channel, adapter specific identifiers, and I refresh the data from the SLD. I had to be in the edit mode to do that, but once I did that, the first issue went. Then the next issue was in my IDoc receiver channel. In the IDoc receiver channel, the port that I had entered was incorrect. The port is defined in the transaction IDX1. So I go into IDX1, and there, this was my port, but this is the name of the port. Make sure you get the name of the port right. All right. It also asks you for RFC destination, and you define the RFC destination in SM59, and the RFC destination is of type 3 ABAP connections. And in my case, the destination was already existing, EH5 client 800. So you use that, you save your object, activate your object, and you're done. Okay. So with this, what have we done? We have now implemented a scenario wherein the source file is an XML file containing sales order information. It is in a custom format. You executed a mapping where it was mapped to an IDoc. You imported a standard IDoc, you executed a mapping, and subsequently delivered the IDoc to SAP ECC system. What you also did was you used the SXMB Money transaction to monitor your message, to track your message so that you could see the IDoc number, and to also view the status. You can also view the IDoc in ECC. Couple of points to note. The IDoc tracking feature that we were looking at here in SXMB Money, that will work only on a few releases of PI, and for that to work, more importantly, you need to make sure that the user that is used in the RFC destination has the required authorizations. Okay, that is the most important, because without authorizations you will get an error. In my case, the user has all the authorizations, and hence you are able to do that. Okay, so I click on tracking, I click on monitor, and I was able to monitor my IDoc. With that, we come to the end of this exercise. The next scenario that we will be building in the next session is going to be again an SAP based interface. You're going to build a SOAP to RFC scenario, and I look forward to meeting you then. Okay, see you and have a nice day. Bye.